Yeah. Okay, let's try now.
Maybe a different browser.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, we're good.
It's getting ready. Setting up your meeting. Yes. Okay, we're done.
Says we're live, baby.
And we live.
Woo!
Hello. Let's get ready to rumble. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
What
Welcome.
Woo!
Welcome back to the Progressives Abroad podcast. This is the Saturday Sound Off edition with your host, BoTik and Screamin Eagle.
Ow! What's up, everybody? How's it going, John?
We're reporting live, transatlantic right now, live all the way over here. I'm here stationed in Oslo. And Screamin Eagle, Mr. Brock, where are you reporting from today?
Thank you for having me today, BoTik. We are live here.
Thank you for coming.
It's my pleasure. Thank you again. Hello, world. We are live here from the USA News Desk of Progressives Abroad, broadcasting live from Delray Beach, Florida, South Florida, the Tri-County area, representing the United States and everything here in South Florida and abroad. And ready to talk about some great topics today and review some things that are going on in the world. And some good stories, some heartwarming stories, some sad stories. We're going to cover, I think, a lot of different stuff today. So we're looking forward to a great broadcast and bring some insight to the world.
All right. Enough of all these niceties. Let's get down to business. No. Thanks a lot, man, for coming on the show. You know, it's always nice to chat with your good friends all the way across the ocean.
Absolutely.
We go way back. Way back.
Way back. The way back machine.
We don't even want to say how far back we go.
No.
I don't even think it's in the way back machine.
I'm trying to give out my age, trying to conceal my identity over here. But age is only
Ladies, he's taken.
Yes, absolutely. But obviously, you know, everything going on in our lives, in our world, it surrounds COVID-19 and the impact and the changes, the profound changes that it continues to have on our life and the lives of our friends and our family and our loved ones. I think you have a personal story to share as well, and names will be retracted, but I learned recently of someone, very close friends, whose father is diagnosed with the virus and is actually in the hospital. I don't have a status on his on where he's at, or you know how is he actually doing. I just know that he's hospitalized and fighting hard with the virus right now. So my thoughts and prayers are with the family and with him in particular, who's battling. And it's just, now it's hitting home, and we're going to start hearing more and more stories like that. I feel like, you know, I think across both ponds, that we're going to start hearing more and more of people that we're connected with that have it and that have been diagnosed, and maybe some are worse off than others. And you know, here we go with those kinds of stories, and just very, very heartbreaking, sad stuff, because there's so much that we wish we could do, and then we don't even have the ability to go hug this, you know, my friends and tell them, hey, it's going to be okay, or you know, it's just everything is virtual now. So what's been your experience with that over there?
Well, yeah, just to add to what you're saying too about, like, you know, more stories coming in. You know, I think it's true. It's interesting. It's kind of like a wave that's been, not to make a pun out of it, but going viral. You know, of course, it's a virus. It's been traveling across the world, and it's interesting how, you know, it sets in different locations at different points in time. You know, I mean, of course, in Asia they got it first, then in Europe, and now it's over in the Americas. So it's just interesting, kind of how, yeah. I think for a lot of people, probably for most people, it doesn't really hit home until it literally hits your home, you know, your homeland or whatever. So this is interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've been hearing some stories rolling in too. Some people that I know And interestingly enough, I mean, things have changed so much in the past couple weeks about this. I mean, if you talk to, people a month ago, depending on where you are in the world, I know if you talk to people a month ago here, they would have been, it's just like the flu. Don't worry
Mm,
about it. Oh, it's getting a little, it's a little different, but it's not a big deal. And now, I mean, it's everything has changed.
completely.
Uh, it's not just like the flu. First of all, it lasts for a long time. The person I talked to today, was in their already fourth week of recovery,
Wow.
and
Wow.
a young person,
Four
you know,
weeks. 4 weeks
yeah,
of recovering. That's
yeah,
wow.
and there's a lot of, I mean,
Mm,
we're not doctors or scientists here, but just from what I mean, what I hear, there's a lot of runoff from this. I mean, I've known people also in my personal life who maybe weren't diagnosed with it, but were having flu-like symptoms just around this time. And it's very
mm,
most likely that it also was this corona COVID-19, because it was just going on for like much longer than just a normal flu. And we've got old people dying, we've got younger people. I mean, and not even with the people dying, but just it goes on for a long time. It's not a thing that you want to get. And like you said, you can't even go and hug these people. You can't
no,
go and comfort them. And imagine how scary that is for people who are experiencing this. I mean, you're
no,
experiencing respiratory problems alone in a hospital setting. I mean, it's just nothing anybody wants to do, especially alone.
no,
So
not at all. And I think even from the care provider's perspective, I have a source here who is in a hospital locally here in our area, and shared some information with me that corroborates what we've been seeing as far as some national reports. But we'll get to that later. But on the human side of things, it's extremely difficult that they can't even go and try to console the people who are there alone for fear of themselves, their own health and safety. They're lacking PPE and proper things to keep them safe anyway. How are they going to spend time in a room more than they need to be with someone and what potentially could be their last days, their last hours? It's really it's gut wrenching, and why we all continue to take this serious. And I mean, we continue to see reports over here in the USA desk of Georgia and just in South Carolina and the naiveness in Alabama and how people are still going to the beach. Like, what?
it's totally insane.
How? If we can, I'm going to put up the most recent numbers here. This is from John Hopkins. I believe that this is the source that most of the world has now turned to. I know there's many out there. I find this as a reputable source
Oh, it's
myself.
about as reputable as it gets.
So here we go. We're showing this live
Oh
right now.
yeah, yep, I've seen this one.
So these are the most up to date numbers, and to quantify things. Unfortunately, these numbers are only going to go up. So this number here is the total confirmed cases worldwide. As you can see, the United States has almost now will probably surpass 300,000 by the end of today. Close to 64,000 deaths. And I'm not sure if our screen is blocking this, so pardon me, everybody, as we're doing this live.
Oh,
But
we can see it great.
let's be positive as well. There's been 245,000 people almost that have quote unquote recovered. So people do make their way out of this, but then of course there are people who don't, and that's the gut wrenching part, is that there's nothing that can be done right now. And I know there's different things that are being talked about, and hydrochloroquine, and I probably mispronounced that. Apologies for that. But just all these different drugs that might be readily available to us that need to be applied. And there's testing being done for experimental drugs that are getting FDA approval to have fast track status to move forward in actually testing people who are positive with the virus, that are open to testing and getting the testing done. So, we've been told by the government, and just from everything that we see, the reputable sources within the government, the CDC, and and I mean, I know WHO isn't with the United States, but just from that level, even internationally, that we here in America are just coming up on peak areas for certain parts of the country. And Florida, I believe, from some of the most up to date projections, is still a few weeks away from hitting our peak.
Mm.
But as I zoom in here, I mean, as you can see, pretty much the entire continental United States has cases. Um, the bigger the circle of red, the higher concentration. So let's just focus here, South Florida. So Miami-Dade, you have almost 4,000 cases. Broward, the flagship county for Fort Lauderdale, has almost 2,000. And then when we're here in the USA desk, is almost 1,000. But the testing is lagging, and the testing is not up to where it needs to be for us to get an adequate picture, and for the scientists to get an adequate picture of what's going on the ground. And I think a lot of this, we look at these numbers, and I try not to focus on this too much during the day, and try to pick times to look at this because of the stress and the stress that this causes us to continually look at this. And I think we all need to be taking a different approach to our mental awareness, and how are we handling things? How are we communicating things? So can you tell me, can you share with us, what are some wellness techniques that maybe that you have, that you're able to do in Oslo, and what are some things that you see from around in your friends on the ground there in Europe on how to handle this mentally, physically too?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting question. I mean, of course, everybody out there that's, listening and dealing with this, which is pretty much everybody in the whole world. I don't know who's listening right now,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, I think it's important, to know that we're all in this together,
And
and everybody's handling it differently. Some people are going through a lot of like mental stresses right now. Some people are in a lot of isolation and they don't like that. Some people are in isolation, they don't, and they do like that. I mean, I saw a cartoon, a political cartoon the other day. It said, this is a really great time for introverts, and it's a really terrible time for extroverts. Um, so yeah, so I mean, it really just depends on the individual person, but I think um, something is going to happen to everybody eventually, because we are just like a social species, you know what I mean?
right.
And some of us will break sooner than others. Some of us will hold out longer than others. I mean, I have to say, personally myself, I feel like so far I've been doing, um if I was going to rate myself, surprisingly well with all of this.
Good.
Yeah, it's, I mean, and I mean, for those of you out there that don't know me, I am pretty much the antithesis of a stay indoors kind of person. I mean, I've worked in the outdoor education and tourism industry for over a decade now, and pretty much, live a life outdoors. So I'm actually surprised that it's not more difficult. I think, to be honest with me, I think I've managed to keep myself occupied by just like focusing on, doing this podcast. And also, we also arrange a weekly open mic that we do
Mm,
online now. So I've been remaining social and feeling like I have kind of a purpose, despite the fact that I'm not able to do the things that I usually do. So in a way, it's been kind of good. But it's funny because some days, especially in the past few days, I felt like getting a bit crusty, um I felt kind of like, oh, like, I mean, I know some people, and bless them, like, I'm not, this is by no means any kind of like criticism. It's, I know some people, they were cracking after the first 2-3 days.
oh
I
wow.
gotta get out. And for me, I didn't crack, but I did feel a little crusty when I woke up this morning. I thought, oh, what I've been doing to deal with all of this is every day maintaining kind of like a routine.
Yeah.
um I do let myself go out like once a day to go for a jog. I'm
Good.
very careful about this, where I go and my routes. And I mean, of course, being outside, at least as we know it, is like okay at this point, as long as you're not around a bunch of other people. So I think this is good things for people to think about back home too. It's like, yeah, I mean, hypothetically or theoretically, you know, uh, there's no problem going to a beach. You know what I mean? But the problem is, especially in Florida, I know because I'm from there, you live there. There's a million freaking people at the beach.
Yeah.
So no people, we can't go to the beach. We cannot go
Nope.
to the beach. If you can find an abandoned beach somewhere, go for it.
We've seen
But
people
you
do that. We actually, so, and I'll get to that in a second, but we've observed people here breaking that rule and going on the beach and walking on the beach still. But
Oh, dude, it's worldwide news.
yeah,
It's worldwide news. I mean, and that being said, I mean, it's crazy in Florida, and Florida is in a particularly unique situation also because it's like tourism capital of
yeah,
United States, one of the tourism capitals of the world.
yep.
I mean, it even took a while for Disney World to close down.
Hmm.
Um, but and it's a new because there's all these people that are still trying to get down there and go on their vacations that they paid for and all this kind of stuff. And I know from what I heard, Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, he finally put like a stop on
Yes.
vacation rentals, I think for 2 weeks.
He
And
stopped that, right? You can't book any hotels for any kind of leisure stay from I think that went effective March 31st. And my apologies for any incorrect information from putting out there, but I know moving forward from now, you can't have any kind of bookings. There is something locally going on, or actually, I think it's starting to make the news cycle nationally. I'm not sure about internationally, but there's a hedge fund or a stock trading firm called Citadel that's based out of Chicago. The CEO of the company is one of the biggest supporters and biggest donors. I think he donated like $5 million to a political action committee for Ron DeSantis. And so he has a team of, I think, 20 or so that they bought out basically the Four Seasons 5-star resort here in Palm Beach. And
oh,
they're using
jeez.
that as their trading floor because everything else is closed in New York and Chicago. So they flew people in from New York and Chicago to live at the resort at the Four Seasons and still be able to function. So I don't know. You hear things, and there's a lot going on out there. But
Well, I
stay
mean,
focused. So go ahead. But
I mean, not to go, that's a whole other story. But I mean, the corruption of Ron DeSantis and the shadiness surrounding that man is just, unheard of and obvious.
yeah, and there's an example for you. So his buddies can get in, but no one else. I mean, people are still coming in. Let me be clear. I mean, there's still. It's not like they've shut off air travel to New York or any of these hotspot areas. But as we talked about in our broadcast earlier this week, that we continually see here on the ground a slow erosion of our civil liberties, and we'll get to that later in this broadcast. But
Yeah, I just wanted to back up 1 second,
yeah,
talking about how people are taking care of themselves. Is Before we get into that, is one thing I do see around here in Norway, where we are in it's very different in the different European countries, of course, but here in Norway, I mean, it's very interesting because Norway is such a outdoor culture. I mean,
right.
you've been here. We've talked about friluftsliv, and everybody wants to
Reduce
be outside exploring
going
the
to
nature all the time.
Nordmarka.
Yeah, it's a part of the culture, you know what I mean? So telling people here that you can't go outside on a daily basis is kind of like telling people in United States that you can't barbecue on 4th of July. You know what I
Ooh,
mean? Yeah, I mean, it's
ooh,
serious business, you know? So I
unacceptable.
mean, no, so the funny thing that we have here in Norway, which is quite unique, is that I mean things like social distancing, I would say, are maybe not the hardest thing for people here because people here are a bit more to themselves. Although when I look out my window, because I have a window and I can look down to the street right out there, I
Mhm.
see still so many people up close with each other walking around. You would
Mm.
Oslo in Norway is not the busiest place to begin with, but it's busy enough. And we still have a really decent outbreak here, but you still just it's kind of incredible. You still just see people, walking around talking to you, not up close talking to each other, and you just really get this feeling like, man, you know if people
It's never
can't
gonna
even
end.
yeah, people can't even really, I mean, I think okay, so if people can't really take it that seriously here, it must be like impossible in some other places, you know. And I
Absolutely.
mean, if you look at the data, I mean, in some ways, and I can try to bring this up in a little bit, but in some ways, you know, the curve is starting to taper out a little bit here. So I think we've done a pretty good job overall at the social distancing. Not to mention, an article just came out today that Norway is actually the third out of the whole world, has the third most testing per capita. So this is pretty
Wow.
amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
Always, you got to remember, it's always per capita with Norway, because Norway is a very small country of about five and a
Yeah.
half million people. Um, but nonetheless, so I mean, it seems like this approach of kind of like, yeah, uh, trying, they're not, it's not like forcing stuff on people here, but it is still like people are taking it fairly seriously. But I mean, there has been some other interesting things happening lately. um oh, okay, no, I'll get to that later with our civil liberties
Oh,
talk.
okay.
But
I
and
like
I
the
the one other thing I just wanted to say real quick is that, you know, just because somebody, I might be saying, oh, I'm doing all right with this, um you know, and you know, it's because I have some stuff to occupy my time. There's many people out there suffering. I mean,
yeah.
and I've talked to some of them myself, you know, friends and family and stuff, that people are just kind of like losing it. And we also have to remember that there's a lot. We're very lucky being, I mean, being in Norway. I mean, it doesn't get any more social safety net than here. And I know the United States has got its issues, which we can get into a little bit more. But there's some, I mean, we got our issues here too, and you got more issues there. But there's some places where they got nothing, really
Yeah.
nothing. Like, and there's, and social distancing is not an option. Like, you have to, you know, live with, you know, your little babies, your babies and your sister's babies and your sister and your grandma, and like everybody's living all together, and people are living in, like, you know, neighborhoods that are very densely packed,
Right.
and it's just not possible to be socially distant. And people, it's not possible for people not to go to work. I mean, we can talk about the failings of all our systems, um you know, for till no end. But I mean, there's some places where people just don't have that option. There is no system, you know,
Right.
there's nothing.
That's true. That is
Or it's
true.
very decrepit, you know, and corrupt, and like, and then there's some places that, there's some places right now where the countries are totally like rebelling against our neighbor Sweden. This is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't quote me on this. I'll find the article, but, or I'll post it later. But just recently, in the past couple days, did they finally go on lockdown? We've been on lockdown
Really?
here, and almost the rest of Europe has been on lockdown since almost like a month now.
Wow.
And they didn't, and they were just like, yeah, business as usual. And I was like, okay, Sweden. I was like, you don't got to be neutral on this one. This ain't the Holocaust. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be neutral on this one. You can go to the
Uh,
science. You know what I mean? So
yeah. I wonder why. I mean, that just must be from their leadership or just how they are. And I think probably to that point, what we've seen here in the States is that there are still states, there's still governors who have not issued orders. And Governor
yeah,
DeSantis here in Florida just only did it because of the incredible push back against him for not issuing those type of orders. But there are governors, and it's primarily southern states that are not adhering or just completely brushing off the science and allowing people to still go about doing what they do and thinking that they're invincible and that's not going to touch their communities. Well, I think they're in for a very rude awakening at some point. And I think it takes people being vocal, and it takes people reaching out to their senators, reaching out to their representatives, and telling them, hey, you need to push against this guy or woman and say, shut it down. And
yep.
I get the pain. We know it firsthand. As we've discussed, I'm furloughed right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm one of the millions and millions and millions of others, the tens of millions of other people here in this country that are dealing with this. And it's only going to get worse as far as that. But what we're hoping for is to take the pain now for the gain later. And the mental aspect of this, it's a process. This is a process. We're so accustomed to things being done instantly in our culture. Now, here's something that's not going to be done right away. I think people might have started off with the mindset of, oh, it's only going to just be a couple of weeks. And okay, maybe by May we'll be okay. Nah, it's not going to be like that. And I think as we've seen here in America, we've missed the boat when it comes to the initial part. We missed that 6-week window from January into February, really, that we could have been doing a lot more when it comes to testing. The testing, the lack thereof, has really caused a major issue. But the way that we deal with it, the way that myself and my wife have been dealing with it, is we almost pretty much every other day we've been pretty good at doing this, working out in our garage.
That's great.
Taking time to be physical. She goes out and she walks the dog. My poor little dog. I'm surprised her legs aren't like broken right now, just how much walking she's been doing. But at least 3 to 4 miles of walking, in our immediate area a day. We go out for drives. We've been allowed to do that now with the stay-at-home order. Okay, yeah, we are taking a chance in doing that. But it's just the two of us. We're not in a car full of 10 people, and we're not getting out and meeting up with 15 people at a location or at someone's house or a beach. I mean, it's just been her and I, and that's it. We've had very limited contact. But I think the mental aspect of it, we try to check in with each other. We talk about how we're feeling. I try not to drive her crazy with certain things that go through my mind. But I think that this is an opportunity for us to also think of others and to reach out to our family, our friends, people that we might not have been able to talk to in a long time. I need to get better at doing that anyway. So maybe this is an opportunity to connect with people that you haven't talked to in years, and check in on them. And at home, for an advice as a PSA here, if you know someone that's living alone, take time to reach out to them, text them, call them, FaceTime with them, talk to them how they're doing mentally. I don't know if it's even possible to send them a handwritten note and just say, hey, thinking of you, love you, something like that.
Maybe you don't want to send them a handwritten note.
Okay,
I don't know.
all right, maybe not right now. All right, but see, but look at these changes, and like it drives me crazy. It drives me crazy that like
Here, send you a little Rona on that, or I'm gonna lick that envelope real good, double time.
But you have to look, but like, and this is the crazy change of things of like, are we really gonna have to do this? So candidly, so like this morning I went to McDonald's and I got us breakfast from McDonald's, and I hate the fact that I have to be conscious now of the packaging and my credit card. And I'm just like, some of me is just like, screw this. Like, I just want to go back to like not having to think about this stuff. And that like we got grocery delivery yesterday and I got frustrated because we had to wipe everything down and like we didn't really have like we have a process of cleansing and like doing it at a certain place. But I just said, all right, screw it. I'm going to carry everything upstairs. I'll expose myself for this short amount of time, but we'll get upstairs. We'll she wiped everything down. And then I went and washed my hands. So it's like, but like, how much more are we going to like, this is our new normal. This is,
dude. So, I mean, this is it, man. I mean, I think that's the thing. I mean, I have to say, like, I'm surprised you're going to McDonald's, dude. That's intense, man.
Me too. And trust me. And like, it's been years since I had eaten that stuff, like especially on any kind of, it's not, hopefully it won't be a regular basis, but I think it's the convenience factor. It's also just readily available. It's something that we just started doing. I think this was our second time in the past like 2 weeks of going. So hopefully it doesn't become a normal thing.
I feel I mean,
to be healthy and eat, but I don't know. I mean, they have deals right now, so we're also conscious of the money right now too.
No, that would be my and that would be my health actually would be my second concern. I'm just kind of surprised that places like McDonald's are even open. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, if there's like a pandemic going on, I mean, okay, grocery stores, places to shop. Okay, I can get that, but McDonald's, it seems like a non-essential service. You know what I mean?
But you know what? So like,
But maybe it is because it's cheap, man. This is the problem we got in America. In America, especially, and it is definitely different here. You know, a freaking in America, a head of broccoli. I took a picture of it last time. Is that 2 heads of broccoli at Publix? Which if people don't know, Publix, it's like a local supermarket that we have in the southern United States. 2 heads of broccoli, $5.
whew,
$5.
wow,
2 heads of broccoli. Maybe if you go to Aldi or something like that, maybe it's like $3
wow.
or something like this. But and then you go to freaking McDonald's and it's what you get like
Two for
a burger
four.
for
You
$1 or
get you get
something.
mixed 2 for 4. It's obviously processed and it's garbage. And
That ain't
we've
vegan.
stayed away from that stuff. That is not part of our lifestyle. And I'm not trying to say that's a healthy choice to make at
Yeah,
all,
no, yeah.
because it's not. We eat very well. I'm sorry, my wife is an amazing cook. She is phenomenal when it comes to cooking healthy stuff. She has changed my life in that regard.
Sherry, if you're
I'm-
listening.
that I'm healthier than I've ever been in my entire life because of her. But yeah, we out of convenience made that decision, and yeah, that's probably not the right decision to make, and maybe we're gonna think
No,
twice.
but actually, I'm not. I mean, I'm not. And don't take this as like a personal criticism. But I'm the thing that bothers me really is that, and I mean, there's still some places like that. But I'm not sure if McDonald's is open here. I kind of. I'm not sure actually. That's a good question because there's not a lot of McDonald's around here. But like, I mean, I know of course like gas stations are open. You can still go into 7-Eleven, convenience stores, these
Yeah,
kinds of places. But I mean, in general, like an organization like McDonald's, I just feel like they could shut down for a month. You know what I mean?
they
Like,
could, and they'd be just fine. Their balance sheet is strong
and they
enough.
could pay their, I mean, it's one of the biggest companies in the world. You know what I mean?
Sure.
McDonald's is I mean, my facts might be a bit dated, but last time I checked, McDonald's is like the number one um, purchaser of beef in the United States, maybe the world. So I mean, they're a ginormous organization, and it's like corporations like that should be able to close down shop because they're also putting their workers in harm's way. And then what are they probably? They're
Absolutely.
probably making like 7.50 an hour or something like that. You know?
True. And I mean, the essential services is that they're providing food, and
Yeah.
that it's there's still restaurants that are open here, and the ones that are just open for takeout. No, there's no dining anymore. There's no sitting anywhere anymore. It's all
Mm-hmm.
takeout only. They offer delivery service, but a lot of those, and so the local restaurants. So here's kind of a on the ground update. And I think if we have this article, let's bring it up. This just made. If I have it, I'll share it right now. Let me see. 1 second. There we go. So this one here just made the national news cycle. So this is from Bloomberg.com, and so here we go. I mean, kind of a clickbait type headline, but the recession breadlines are forming in Mar-a-Lago's shadow. So this is
This is a very already. I mean, it's kind of actually funny just to say we got Bloomberg, Breadlines, Mar-a-Lago. This already is a very loaded
very
situation going on.
very much so. But this is local. I mean, this is here on the ground. This is up the street, and there's good in this article and what it's talking about. So there's a restaurant called Howley's that's here, Howley's Diner, and so yeah, it's 10 minutes from the island of Palm Beach where President Trump lives, and Worth Avenue is Chanel and Louis Vuitton. But like this is saying, there's 10 million people plus across this nation that are suddenly unemployed. So yeah, we're seeing modern day breadlines form. So, but the staff at Howley's and their owner, this guy Rodney Mayo, who's a restaurateur here, I think down in the article shows him or talks about him. Yeah, so this guy right here. So they've been prepping food to give out to residents
Oh.
here. So I mean, he owns 17 locations, and look, he had to lay off 650 people. So, but he's doing something good, and this is phenomenal. Look, so 15,000 meals he gave away in the first 10 days, but it only cost him an average of $1.30 each. So, I mean, people have been donating. They've been getting on board with this effort and initiative, and I think we're going to start seeing more of this too, especially as food banks continue to see a massive increase in demand. There was something I believe in this article that talked about that. Yeah, right here. Okay, so Feeding South Florida is a big nonprofit here. So look what who she or he. Sorry, I'm not finding right now. But anyway, but this person was quoted as saying that the demand has tripled its running costs. So like under Blue Skies, they spend about 125K a week to operate, and now they're looking about 350,000 a week just to purchase food. They'll need about 1.4 million a month to keep this going at the current rate. So food banks and pantries are feeling a crisis now. So in a month's time, 2 months time, like what's this going to look like? How is this going to look here in our community? But at least there's people trying to do good stuff. But it just shows the contrast between and this is just what we see here every day in South Florida, the social disparity where you literally drive across one street and you see people who are living in abject poverty, and then you drive over a bridge and you see McLarens and Bentleys and Ferraris and Lamborghinis.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and
Growing up in
that's just
South
how it goes.
Florida is like growing up. I mean, living in South Florida is just like living at the fault line between like rich and poor.
Yeah,
It's such a
absolutely.
stark contrast. It's such a spectrum, but it's also a very stark contrast. I mean, when you look at, for example, you've got Palm Beach, then you've got the canal, and then you've got like the rest of everything,
Right. That's true. And so to like what is this going to mean for moving forward? And what I'm going to try to bring up here right now, another on the ground update, and we talked about this in our last broadcast. The welfare system here in the state of Florida is at best painful. So here's this. So this is from a local news source here. This is WPBF, the local ABC affiliate. This is from a day ago, but frustrating unemployment benefit system in Florida, still not working for many. So, and that's also firsthand for us. So I was able to log in a few weeks ago, and I think a silver lining for me being laid off on March 20th was that I was able to jump in line before the real crazy crush came. So I was able to navigate this extremely antiquated, underfunded system, admittingly by the politicians that run this here in the state of Florida, that I was able to get on and submit my claim, and it's still being processed. So I still don't even know if it's been approved or when I'm getting my checks or whatever. But I at least have myself in line, and I'm in the system. Whereas my wife, it's a totally different story. So she this morning had to print off. This is where we're at in 2020 here in the greatest country on earth.
No, they got you doing good old paperwork.
Good old paper application, man. Welcome back to like 2001. And I think probably even then I probably could have done it online and would have worked. So this is where we're at right now with the system. And the governor's admitted, and this guy Ken Lawson, who heads up the Department of Economic Opportunity here in the state of Florida, they've admitted that there's obvious things wrong, and the system isn't set up to handle this amount, the hundreds of thousands, literally, of people that are trying to apply for social services right now here in the state of Florida. So they get it, and they're trying to work as diligently as possible to update the system. They're bringing in extra staff. They've outsourced stuff. They're just trying to process this avalanche. So like, let's see here. Look, so far, for the week ending, and this is when my claim processed. I was one of these 226,000 people that applied during that week. So now, I mean, so far for the week ending, now that number is going to be much higher. That to me is way low for what's going on. But things are continually to get worse with this. So what is that going to mean for stuff like what Howley's and what these food banks, what are they doing? Because you have low income workers that are losing their job primarily from the service industry. And like you were saying, Florida is so tourism based. What is that going to look like a month from now? How is that going to look? Are people get to a point where they've completely lost it because they're not getting these benefits, because in the one-time stimulus check that we're supposed to be getting from the federal government, I think it's something to the tune of 80% of people are going to be getting, because they filed their taxes electronically, and they got their refunds electronically instead of like a cut check. So those people are going to get their money first. But then there's still people that they're projecting aren't going to get their stimulus money until September. I mean, yikes. So, and now they're as hopeful as they possibly can to get this system going here, at least in the state of Florida. And the way things work for our friends abroad, the way things work here in America is that each state has its own unemployment system, unemployment insurance, it's called. So every single state runs their program on their own. And so each state does it differently. The money that the government approved in the CARE Act is going to back up. And as Chuck Schumer said, it's going to be unemployment insurance on steroids, that whatever the per week amount. So here in Florida, it's a measly 225, I think. Don't quote me. Sorry, again, getting it wrong. $225, $275 a week from the state. Now the federal government's coming in behind that and saying, at least from now for the next 4 months, it's going to be $600 on top of whatever state benefits you're getting. So that averages, I think, God, don't quote me on the math. Again, my apologies for any incorrect numbers, but 20 some odd dollars an hour. So that's probably more than some people even make anyway. But this is what it's needed right now. And you know, to be blanket across the board, I think that covers it for most people, that it's going to be able to help them. But until then, I know there's some people that are struggling right now to figure out where they're going to get money to go buy food. So they have to rely on those kind of entities like what Howley's is doing and what these other Feeding South Florida, all these other wonderful organizations.
I mean, this is something that for me is like really, I don't know. To me, it just seems really criminal on the government's part. You know what I mean?
I agree.
You pay your tax.
Elaborate. What do you mean? Like,
yeah, because I mean, it's like, okay, what? Okay, so I was for example, I was watching this very nice talk, which I think is probably floating around the internet quite a bit right now, with Bill Gates, where he was talking about I think it was like a TED talk from 5 years ago, and he was talking about how viruses and pandemics are our future. Like this is going to be, it's not war, which is going to steal a lot of lives in the future. It's going to be viruses and pandemics. And one of the great points that he made was that, why are we not training for pandemics and things like this like we are for war? You know, if you want to get the military on something, oh man, they call up the military and there's all these special task force, and you got the reserves, and you got all this kind of stuff all loaded up. And this is where our tax money is going. And I mean, I'm not even going to get into it right now because that's a whole other discussion about the validity of the wars that we are in. I mean, for the most part, it's total bullshit, regime change bullshit, bullshit wars that we're involved in, just sucking money and sucking oil and all this bullshit. And people are dying all over the place. But sure. That is the war the war that we're at now is the war with the coronavirus. And I know people love, especially in America, oh, going to war. So okay, we're going to war on the coronavirus. We don't got any reserves. I mean, we don't have like reserve doctors out there, or people that are trained in like people that can, for example, and maybe aren't medical professionals, but have been trained in like how to administer services like testing and these kinds of things. I mean, so we need to be prepared for stuff like this. And I mean, even if Bill Gates, he's a smart guy. He's a rich guy, one of the richest people in the world, but he's not a doctor and he's not a president and he's not really a leader, except maybe the leader of his own company and his philanthropy organization. So he's basically just like, some rich guy, some smart rich guy that has this idea. And that was already like 5 years ago, and I'm sure he's not the only person that's thought about this. I've thought about this. I'm some guy just sitting here on my computer, in an apartment, So I mean, the federal government has made a decision and has made a decision time and time again to not prepare for stuff like this, because if anybody's got the intel, if anybody's got the money and the resources, it's the government. I mean, we already know, like,
it's not politically to expend the political capital on those type of initiatives prior to this pandemic. It wouldn't have been they wouldn't be they get no traction. People wouldn't be lining up behind them with their fists pumping in the air. Oh yeah, let's go spend money on pandemic preparation. So you talk about what is the future going to look like? What is this? What can we learn from this? We touched on this on our last broadcast too, but that let's hope that people moving forward will idolize doctors, will idolize scientists, will want to be the ones that find vaccines and cures for these types of diseases and for other diseases that are out there, multiple sclerosis, cancer, I mean, you name it, Alzheimer's. But instead of idolizing Kim Kardashian and who wants to have the next makeup line out there, let's hopefully have some real heroes come out of this. And maybe that's to be determined a few months down, when maybe there's one scientist or a team of scientists that end up finding a vaccine for this, or some kind of cure or some kind of treatment for it, and they get a Nobel Peace Prize. Like, let's make sure that they're put out there in the media and into the masses, that they should be the shining examples of what determination and coming together will look like for society overall. And just what is this going to change as far as potentially as our civil liberties? How is it going to change? We've already given up so much of our civil liberties, and where are we going still? Even, and I mentioned this pre-show here, that we've seen already in New York City that they are explicitly planning for civil unrest already. And that there are stores that are boarding up like a hurricane right now, putting plywood on the front of their glass on their stores on the streets of New York because of potential civil unrest. And what happens when this is again happening in New York, when 1,000+ people on the New York Police Department and police officers become sick? What is that going to look like?
Well, yeah, and dude, like, just to before we dive real deep into that, just to add a little bit to your point about like our first responders and stuff that you're talking about, like the police and I mean, I think that America has a lot of respect for first responders. This was very much people. This was what I want to say, groomed, and in many cases for good reason. This was groomed during especially after September 11th and stuff like that. That's where this whole term, I think, came from. But we can really hope that people learn from this situation. But even more so, we should hope that the government learns from this situation.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other story, because I'm not so sure about that. But also, we need to have some higher regard to these wage workers, like people that are, I mean, Jesus Christ, like, You were okay, like you just drawing from your example earlier, you went to McDonald's today. There's people out making deliveries all day long. I know a lot of people, like, I mean, I'm out of business right now, but I know a lot of people like just locally here that are like delivering food on bikes, working at the supermarket, all kinds of stuff like this, making
Right.
deliveries from house to house. And it's like, man, so many things have come to light during this thing. Like, for example, healthcare, it shouldn't even be an argument anymore. And like minimum wage, like raising minimum wage, like all this shit that people have been talking about. Oh yeah, like McDonald's, like you're working at McDonald's, that's just like a job for teenagers, or like, oh, you deliver pizza, oh, that's just a job for like people that can't get other jobs, or you didn't go to college, blah blah blah. It's like these are the people that are right now keeping us alive. Like the people that work like at the supermarket, these people are keeping us alive. I mean, they are first responders too, you know what I mean? They're on
Correct.
the fucking front lines, and they're out there making shitty wages and possibly getting sick. And when those people get sick, they're gonna get and if they're sick for too long or whatever, like, if they lose their job or whatever, those are the people, especially like hourly workers, they're probably like not gonna get very great benefits, if that, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And people are getting kicked off their health insurance like left and right.
Yeah,
um
absolutely.
it's out of
And
control,
it
man.
is out
So
of control. I mean, I'm one of the lucky ones when it comes to health insurance, that even though I've been furloughed, my organization has made the decision to still cover everyone's health benefits at least until the end of May.
mhm,
So we at least all still have, whoever was eligible, whoever enrolled in the program. Of course, it's not everybody who worked for my organization.
mhm,
You already have had to have had it through the organization, which I did.
mhm,
So I still have health insurance. Now, given my health insurance was private health insurance. But actually, I had a conversation earlier this week with someone who is actually selling health insurance right now.
mm.
And so President Trump
Yikes.
has made the decision to not reopen
Yeah, I
the
heard about that. Yeah.
exchanges, and so to that for people to sign up for Obamacare, that there's only a set period of time. There's the open enrollment period, and Trump has made the decision not to open that back up and is just leaving it to the states to manage. So what does that look like? Well, there's really no options. And so for people who've been laid off and in a health crisis, then yeah, like look, this builds to your point of that there needs to be a more concentrated effort on some type of national healthcare system. Now, is that going to be Bernie's idea? Is that going to be Medicare for all? I don't know how that would work here. I'm
Mhm.
not sure how. I'm not as knowledgeable as I want to be on the intricate details to be able to discuss that. On the
Yeah.
surface of things, you have 120 million people like myself who have private health care insurance. But then you have the 20 or 30 million people who are uninsured. And then also, and then this is totally another topic, but undocumented people who are here as well. So how are they covered? And they have to walk into, in fear of walking into, I'm talking about undocumented people, to walk into a emergency room, and
Mhm.
then they might be exposing themselves to potentially being found, and maybe they don't get health care because they're afraid that they're going to get rounded up. And
Mhm.
now what does that look like in those communities, especially during this type of
Oh, this
pandemic,
is horrible.
that
Yeah.
they're afraid to go get healthcare. So there
Mhm.
are fundamental changes that need to happen. And I think coming out of this, we've already known that fundamental changes need to happen. Look, Obamacare is not perfect. The protections that were provided under Obamacare impact people in my life, that as far as the pre-existing conditions. And I think that those are things that absolutely need to be universal and to stick around. However, when it comes to offering a system where it's more big government, I don't know how many people here yet. There's definitely a section of America that is all for that, but you're talking a broader base to get on board with that. I don't think people are there just yet, but there are ways to expand upon the foundation that was already laid with the Affordable Care Act. Now, is the Affordable Care Act the best thing on earth? I think even people who wrote it, like Joe Biden, would probably admit that, okay, there obviously needs to be some changes done. There definitely need to be some changes done to that system. But the real problem is that when it first started, the exchanges, you had these big healthcare companies, these big health insurance companies that were providers within this system. Now, because of the cost, you're down to like 2 or 3 providers on the state level for Obamacare. And some of these are mom and pop ones that have no in-network coverage. The deductibles are an insane amount of money. You're not going to be able to go see your primary care physician that you've been seeing for your entire life because most likely they're not in network. So what does that lead you to do? You have to look at private insurance. And so those premiums are higher, and it might be a little bit of a higher barrier for them to get in. So those people are targeting healthy people. They want to enroll healthy people. They don't want sick people on their payroll, for lack of a better term, because that costs them money. So like there's a lot of like these cost sharing, like these Christian health insurance cost sharing
Bullshit,
things. I don't know if you've seen those.
Total
So
bullshit.
people are trying to take advantage of it. Yeah, I mean, like, and they're trying to take advantage of people.
Dude, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, man, but like the simple fact that like, I mean, there are the only system we have other than like Medicare, which does exist, but like it's only accessible for a very and Medicaid, which is only accessible for a very limited amount of people or a limited part of the population. The simple fact that the only other option is a fucking private healthcare companies, this already is taking advantage of people. I mean, what is more? I mean, I didn't really intend to get into like a healthcare, go down the healthcare, but I mean, but it is so important. It's just, it's insane. It's insane.
Yeah,
it is total. It's like at this point in time. I mean, so like, I'll just give you an example. Like, we all have different kinds of privileges. Like, you have the privilege that you said you have the privilege that you're on like you have the health insurance. I have the privilege that I live in a country where it's just by default, it's a human right that people have health insurance. But like, it's my job here to speak out on this stuff because and try to bring other people up into that and like equalize the situation, because it is like really nothing more than a lot of propaganda that's like been stirred up in the community, like, and by the community I mean like in like the American community right now, that some people think that they should be able to have healthcare but other people shouldn't. And then that's some propaganda that's been stirred up simply because there's huge companies funding this propaganda. I mean, the fact that you would watch the Democratic primaries and then during the commercials, they would show commercials from healthcare companies and like organizations protesting against healthcare. I mean, who the fuck are these people? They don't want people to have healthcare. This is, I mean, it shouldn't even be an argument anymore. It's like, and you know what? I know it's complicated, and of course it's complicated. It's a system, it's systems, all kinds of systems are complicated. It's not really for us little people to number crunch and like figure out. It's up to us electing individuals to surround themselves by other individuals who are smart and educated and economists and healthcare professionals and all kinds of stuff like that.
Right, but I think there's
deliver
also
that basic human right to people. That's their job, you know.
I don't disagree with that at all, and like, but that's also a part of educating people that might not have access to the education to make the proper decisions to elect the people that will do those things and that we can trust to do those things. I think there's a lack of trust with a lot of people and a big disconnect with a lot of people with what is the federal government and what role do they play in my life? How do they impact my life? And I think a lot of people are against big government. And I think the word, and we talked about this, the word socialism has a negative connotation attached to it to a lot of people. And I think even if people try to understand more of what that would look like and how that would look in their day-to-day lives, then maybe they would get a better idea. But I think that it's just that word and those things that are attached to it because of what's happened in history in other societies, not here in America, but that I don't know if people are open to that on a mass scale. There are obviously tens of millions of people who support a candidate like Bernie, who want those kinds of changes. And I'm not against some of those changes happening, but there are fundamental things of how is that going to happen and what will that look like and how will that be paid for. But now everything's different now moving forward. Everything is different because of the virus. If
Yeah.
this cannot be the catalyst to fundamentally change our approach and our thought process and our systems, what else will there be? There will be nothing else that could have an opportunity as monumental as this, because this affects everyone.
Oh yeah, dude. And
Or
this is just the
doesn't
dress
matter.
rehearsal. This is just the dress rehearsal. I mean, not only might there be, there will be like more pandemics and probably even more dangerous shit in the future. But like,
Sure.
what's the thing we've been talking about, for ages? It seems for ages now. It's like, and I won't go down a huge road, but I'm just saying, like, this is like dress rehearsal just for stuff like climate change, like the slow,
Sure.
the slow roll of climate change. Not a lot of people know it, but even down in Louisiana, we have legit climate refugees within our own country of the United
Sure.
States. This is
Right.
insane. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, and that's something that, once again, like, I've heard some people compare, coronavirus. They say, oh, there's nothing like this that I've ever experienced in my life. And I'm talking to like older people. The only thing that people even compare it to is maybe, at least in the United States, people compare it to stuff like September 11th. But this is way bigger than that, because this is like a massive, this is not a conspiracy. This is not one person against another, or one group against another, an ideology against another. This is like it's a virus. It's a global pandemic.
To that exact point, this should be the topic that unites everyone together. If this cannot be the one universal topic, because again, this literally affects every single human being on Earth, the almost 8 billion people on Earth. This affects everyone. This is profound. This changes our way of life forever moving forward. It has to, and it will. And what those changes look like, we can try to paint pictures of what that'll look like, but no one really knows, unless you're from the future and like you're going to tell us what it is. But no one really knows what that looks like. So we can only have an idea what that looks like. But my point is that this is an opportunity.
Yes.
This is an opportunity. Now, right now, it's like I said before, this is a process. So what stage are we in this process? I think we're still in the stage of fear, and we're still in the stage of survival. And we're going to be in this stage for quite some time. As we continue to go down this path here, at least here in the United States, it's one thing to see and hear what's going on, but when we opened the broadcast today, what we talked about, the personal touch, the personal effect of this. It's one thing that most of us first are going to be economic casualties of the virus. So that's the first hit that we're all taking. And we're processing that anyway, as is what are we going to do? How are we going to have money? How are we going to survive? The next process is, okay, what if we actually end up getting sick? The economics be damned. If you're not even alive, who cares? So it's a matter of being able to take what we're going through, eventually processing it, but then expanding on what we can do to better our lives moving forward, to prevent, to try our best to prevent something as catastrophic as this happening again, to disrupt our lives. Like you said, and I do not disagree, there will be other pandemics in your and I's lifetime. Guaranteed. There
Absolutely.
will be. There's just too much deforestation and too much infringement on wildlife and just other things and so many other things that would cause there to be a global explosion on this scale. And even why didn't SARS have such an outbreak as this is now? We didn't have nearly the amount of flights going in and out of China every day as we do globally as we do now. So just as we become more intertwined as a global economy and a global society, these are things that are going to continue to pop up. So we have the technology to be able to stop this from exploding. Will we stop it from happening? Probably not. It will happen, but through testing and isolation and all these parameters that we can put in place that hopefully wouldn't be too much of an infringement on our civil rights, we can prevent something from this blowing way out of proportion in the future. But it takes having people in place in power and questioning those people in power, holding them accountable, and having ideas brought to the table to be able to sustain this moving forward. And let's just hope that our elected officials moving forward can realize this, not be so self-centered, not be so focused on things that they shouldn't be focused on. And let's see if they can really make fundamental change to better society overall, which we could only hope for.
Yeah, I think this is a common thread that's going through the conversation tonight, is that there is a lot of opportunity in this moment. As
Yes,
we
there is.
started off
There is.
talking about, talking about things you can do at home to like keep yourself occupied. I mean, of course, some people are having a really bad time right now. Some people are, sick at home with coronavirus, dangling on a thread.
Yep.
Other people are taking care of them, and people are unemployed and whatnot. But there's a lot of opportunity in our personal lives, and there's massive opportunity in our political and governmental and structural lives. I mean, this is an existential. I still don't buy that it's I still don't think it's more of an existential threat than climate change, but it's all intertwined. It's actually quite intertwined. I'm just gonna go real quick because I did notice before we move on, because I think we still have to get to our civil liberties focus group. But we do have some comments here in the YouTube chat, so I just want to address.
Ooh.
There are some people that are trying to holler at us.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, so
Thanks for
let's
tuning
see.
in. We appreciate it.
I'm just gonna read some comments. Let's see. We've
Please
got
do.
Fizzoli. We got Fizzoli typing in.
Hey, Fizzoli, my paisano.
Yeah, healthcare should be a basic human right on any organized, governed nation. Yep, I agree. Let's see. Okay, yeah, Johnny D wants to zoom in. Okay, maybe we'll arrange that for next time.
The zoom in. To drop in and to join us.
Yeah, I think
Feature
we're
questions in the YouTube chat, everybody, and BoTik, they're our moderator, our host.
we're definitely going to get Johnny D on the show. I know he's another local Norwegian, local American progressive living abroad.
Oh, okay,
We're definitely
good.
he was on a couple weeks ago on the he's a brother,
round table.
Funny guy. He's a comedian. Yeah, he was on the round table.
Okay.
He'll definitely be on soon. Let's see. We got any other oh yeah, so what from Johnny D. He said airlines should be tried for human rights violations with how they treat passengers like cattle.
Ooh.
We need to Temple Grandin the airline industry. I'm sorry, you'll have to provide more context for this. I don't really, but I mean, yeah.
Interesting point. I mean that just that one sentence is a lot to unpack there. I would say. I mean, if you want to implicate a private organization, and basically, I think what he's insinuating, and please, if he's still listening, correct me if I'm wrong, but insinuating that the airlines are partly at fault for this, for being able to allow people to travel internationally. But I think if that's what he's saying, which I'm probably totally butchering what he's trying to say, and I don't want to say things, put words in his mouth, but what I would say to that is that you can't blame the airlines for that. And but that point, let's again about opportunity moving forward and what is our life going to be moving forward. So the airports are a big part of that. The airlines are a big part of that. He brings up a very good point. I'm not doubting that in the least bit. So let's just quickly, let's compare 9/11 and the changes that we had from 9/11.
Let's do it.
And this will transition into our civil liberties talk.
Yes.
But the changes that we had from 9/11 and the infringement on our civil liberties in order for us to fly was in the name of safety. So now this will also be changes too, and we've already had these changes, and we're just doing it all on the fly right now. So again, we're all trying to adapt and process what we're going through. But the civil liberties that we're going to have to change when it comes to, let's talk about something like flying.
But
screenings though, that you're going to have to take your temperature to get on the plane. And if you have a fever, maybe you're not going to be able to fly. Like those kinds of things, unless there's like a 5-minute test to test if you have a virus, then you're not going to be able to get through security in the first place. Those things might come, sure. I wouldn't doubt that for a second.
Yeah, well, I mean, we got to do what we got to do. I think that I don't know. I think the whole civil liberties. I mean, what when we talk? Okay, let's define civil liberties, or give me a summarization of what you think, or what you think the average American thinks about civil liberties, because I don't hear so many people over here. And I think that we're on actually quite a bit more restriction than over in the United States right now. I don't hear
You
so
are.
many people over here worried about their civil liberties.
Because, well, I think it just has to do a lot with what is ingrained into us as a society, the Bill of Rights, and that we
Mm-hmm.
as a union, is of 50 states,
Mm-hmm.
48 in the continental United States, for me to be able to openly travel to another state and still have the same. Now, given each municipality, local laws, they differ, ordinances and so forth, but to have a union means that we're able to travel freely, and
Mm-hmm.
commerce and goods are able to cross state lines freely without anything impeding us from doing what we want to do. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, can also translate into Europe in the
Yeah.
the Schengen zone,
Uh-huh.
uh, and
Schengen,
just
yeah.
really the EU overall. But I think that we are just so in tune with what our fundamental rights are. Not saying Europeans aren't at all, but we have one body of governance in the sense that there's the federal government, and the EU's been what, 35 years or so, 30 years, 35 years. So, but, and that's
It's like
different,
no,
something like
yeah.
that. Again,
I'm gonna check it out.
apologies for quoting incorrect information if I'm wrong, but it hasn't been around all that long, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that formation of a mindset, you're taking individual countries that have their own laws, their own ways of doing things, and now you're trying to incorporate all these different countries into one thing. Whereas the United States has always been is one, but with separate states who have different ideas and different things. So it's just a totally different form of government, a totally different system of government. But I think that we're so accustomed to being able to go where we want, do what we want, however we want, express what we want, say what we want, invest in what we want, open what we want, close what we want, want, whatever we want to an extent,
Yeah.
right?
Just to interject here, but this of course can lead to a shitload of problems. You know what I mean?
Of
I mean,
course, sure, but
there's this idea, because I mean, I'm just gonna say, like, because I mean, and I think we were discussing this a little bit more. I mean, it's not so much different over here. It's really not. I mean, I can say that from living
Western
here and living
society,
there.
right?
I mean, it's not so much different. There's something in the mentality that's different, because the rates is not, it's not so different. I mean, here we have also the European Union, and Norway is not part of the European Union, but it's part of the Schengen area and it's part of the European
Mm,
Economic Area. And I mean, I'll just say this, like, I mean, the European Union was formed, in the wake of World War II. So we had to, I mean, I wasn't here, but Europe had to figure out some way to get along after basically 1,000 years of busting the shit out of each other. You know what I mean?
sure.
And we realized, okay, that's not going to work anymore. Now, let's say, I mean, after World War, after World War, after Crusade, after all this shit, they said, okay, we're going to try to make some kind of peace here. You know what I mean? And it's not perfect. And there's a lot of countries that, have a lot of grapes and all kinds of stuff like that. But let's just say this, it's the best Europe has been working, I think, in the history of the continent.
Sure.
And the thing is, I mean, states can close their borders too, just like countries can close their borders here, in this union. And I mean, what I don't understand, I mean, I, I get, I have all kinds of ideas and get paranoid, and I think about all different kinds of ways that things could work out, and I don't really trust governments. I mean, it's the old BoTik saying is all governments suck, but at least have one that seemingly works for you. You know what I mean? Because this
Mm-hmm.
happens to be. I mean, unless we're gonna have just like total anarchy. I mean, maybe one day BoTik will be president, but until that day, we just have to try to work on it. But I mean, the thing
Got
is
my
like,
vote.
we are grown-ups, you know what I mean? And sometimes I feel like this rationality of like, oh my god, like my civil liberties are being violated. It's like, I mean, to a certain extent, like I don't want these things to happen, but within reason, you know. I mean, if we're grown-ups and we're reasonable people. Now, I'm not saying that this is not, you know, in the context of like fucking Trump is the president and like the federal government's shady and fucked up and like they've been shady and messed up. I mean, the Patriot Act was a crazy disaster for many people, you know. I think I'm not sure how much it really helped, and I know it definitely hurt a lot of people. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, okay, yeah, like I want to have this right to like go from Florida to Georgia. But it's like, what if you find out that like all these mofos up in Georgia got the coronavirus and you say, you know what? I don't have anything against those people over there, but if the decision was made that people themselves cannot manage themselves and we have to somehow contain this as like a piece of legislation, like a legal thing, like the border, it has nothing, for me the border has nothing to do with like I don't want you, but it's like it is the only way that we legally can kind of like contain this thing in our own little way, you know what I mean? It's like right now Sweden hasn't been abiding by like the same conditions that we've been abiding by over here, or by abiding by those down in Denmark. So like Sweden's kind of in this weird, unique island position where everything's been open, and now coronavirus is like going rampant over there. It's like, yeah, like,
Mm.
I mean, to be honest, I'm kind of like, I mean, I mean, I wouldn't want it to go on forever. And it does suck a little bit. Like, oh, if I want to go to Sweden, I mean, I can't come to United States right now. You know what I mean? They've closed it
Right.
off for me. You know, I
So
mean,
are
I
you just
could.
saying, are you just saying in the context of what we are dealing with now with this
Yes,
pandemic,
we have to make, we
that we
have to
have to
be.
make these civil liberties concessions,
No, I would say we
basically, to
have
the
to make these
people?
reasonable. We have to make these reasonable decisions. You know what I mean? These reasonable grown-up decisions to be like, okay, everybody, don't fucking now. Now, it would not be reasonable for the government to take advantage of these things to like push other stuff. You know what I mean? This
Right,
would
and
not be
that's my
reasonable.
fear,
Yeah,
is that
and
people,
and
that
and I
government's going
totally
to keep
get it.
doing.
Like man, I do not trust the U.S. government. You know what I mean? Like in many ways. You know what I mean? And I don't. I have to say, if you wanted to ask me on my trust level, and maybe I'm a total dumbass for saying this, but I would definitely trust the Norwegian government more than the U.S. government. But I don't trust the Norwegian government fully either. And you know, I don't trust any government. Why should we? You know what I mean? Why should we? But these are like the organizing bodies that we have and that we've like elected. Now, I mean, so I can understand why it's a bit sketchier. I mean, sketchy worldwide, but I mean, we have to say, okay, what's our alternative? You know what I mean? Okay, we're just gonna let people go wherever the fuck they want, you know, and not try to contain this. Not because you were saying earlier, like I hope that we can in the future learn from like what the scientists and what the doctors and all this stuff say. It's like we got to learn right now. Like it's in real time right now. Like this is like bed bugs like eating the country alive, and and there's no set up healthcare system, and the unemployment system ain't working out so well. So it's like, I mean, there's all these things that will. I mean, if we don't try to contain it, it will. And if people just keep running around like ranting and raving about their civil liberties rather than just like take a chill for a few weeks or maybe a few months, lay low, you know, and maybe this shit gets back to normal. But if it doesn't, if it keeps infesting, man, you want to talk about civil unrest, then the civil unrest is really gonna come. You know what I mean? Then
Right.
it'll be like it won't be even about, I mean, then people, yeah, of course, will be getting pissed off about civil liberties and stuff, but people are just gonna be hungry. You know, people can be hungry.
Sure.
They're gonna be
But
like
then,
sitting in
right.
their house isolated, and they're gonna like freak out. You know, and then the real shit's gonna happen. If everybody could just be like, "Yo, I'm a grown up and I got kids, and I'm gonna maintain them or whatever, and I'm just gonna accept the fact that we're in some fucking unprecedented. This ain't about my civil liberties because I'm sorry, the people in I live in Florida or China or Colorado or whatever, and the people in Spain have the same disease as my neighbor, and the people in like Tunisia have the same disease as my neighbor. So like, it's not really about like our personal civil liberties as much as it is about our like global responsibility at this point. Then
Can
it's
you,
just gonna,
to that point, can you bring up, for all the viewers, the article that you were showing with the
oh yeah.
Robo-Cop there?
So yeah, I mean, but I
Talk a
mean,
little
no,
bit more
no,
about that for us too, quick.
and there's no doubt about it that there's no like great answer, because I mean nobody wants their like liberties to be uh taken away from them or whatever, but I mean for the most part it doesn't sound sounds like it's happening so much now. I mean, this is interesting. Here, let me bring this up. I don't know what to think about this. Is this totally freaky, or is this awesome, or is this
A
funny?
little bit
I
of
don't
both.
know. A little bit of everything.
A little bit of
Sci-fi,
I
very
would say.
sci-fi. Okay, so here we are. The headline is, this is from The Guardian.
Okay.
Show me your
Reputable?
ID. Tunisia deploys Robo-Cop to enforce coronavirus lockdown. A police robot is patrolling the streets of the capital, Tunis, calling out suspected violators of the lockdown.
Wow.
Yeah. So you've got this box robot. This is pretty wild.
Wow.
This is the first thing I saw this morning. That's why I sent it to you, because I was just like, this is, yeah. So I'll just read a little bit of this. Tunisia's interior ministry has sent a police robot to patrol the streets of the capital and enforce a lockdown imposed last month by the country who is battling the spread of coronavirus. Known as PG Guard, the Robo-Cop is remotely operated and equipped with infrared and thermal imaging cameras, in addition to sound and light alarm systems. So interesting.
Very. I don't know if we're gonna start seeing that here. I have no knowledge on Tunisia's government and their system, and what rights do their people have versus here. Can I see technology being used and utilized to help implement certain measures? Yeah, I mean, I think we're already seeing that happen. But to the point of where we have eye scans as they do in China, and or facial recognition, really, excuse me, and the apps that they have to track them, and the social ratings that they have. I don't think we'll see that. Now, they don't have a choice. Here, we have a voice, we have a choice. We can push back on those things as much as we can, as long as it's talked about and known about. And I mean, there's already been infringement on our rights with certain things prior to the virus. And I mean, just look what happened with the Obama administration. They all spy on us. They're spying
Oh
on us
yeah.
now. I mean, we know that they are. And in, the name of national security and defense. So, but it's not as in our face as it is. And let's again, I'm going to go reference China, where that's ingrained in what they do and every single thing. We know it's there in our society, but we're okay with it because we get to seemingly do whatever we want, whenever we want, however we want. But we're on camera wherever we go. I mean, my face is tracked wherever I go. My car is tracked. And my every movement can be traced if they really want to. My cell phone. So I mean, we have these modern things that are already being used to track us and to monitor us, to monitor our movement. So what is that going to look like now because of the virus? And how are you going to be able to track people in the concession that we'll have to give up again in our civil liberties and our civil rights of privacy, which I mean, we're entitled to that. What is that going to look like moving forward? And how will that continue to be infringed upon in the name of security and health and so forth? Now, I'm not against what we're doing right now. I think we need to do what we're doing. If anything, it needs to be more uniform. And this is where now Trump, the federal government, and he's playing the right card. I got to say, he's playing the
Which
right
one's
card
that?
in the sense that decisions normally should be left up to the states. Like that the role of the federal government is not to intervene into states' decisions and the choices that they make to what they provide to their population in the states. However, in an instance such as this, there should have been a much more uniform message coming from the federal government, not so much where it's just been this smorgasbord of shit that has just been thrown together by you have, and there's so much confusion. So just here locally, you have local municipalities that are making decisions that supersede what a county is making, because the city is making a more concentrated effort to control things, where the county decided not to. But then the state is letting the local municipalities do their own thing. But then when the state comes in and overrides all of them, then it doesn't matter what they've said locally or from a county level. So to go
Yeah.
state, county, municipality. So it's just been a lot of confusion of where we're at. So my
Sounds like
fear,
elections. It sounds like it's something is like very discombobulated in the way that our bureaucracy in the United States is working, because you have all these.
completely,
It's not centralized, you know.
no, it's not. And this is when it needs to be. This kind of instance is where we need the federal government to step in
And
and
dude, and you know what
control
the
things.
problem is? Like, I think the big thing is that, and this is why, I mean, I I keep harping on this, like, kind of like civil liberties, because I think it's more of like, I feel like a lot of people don't really know what this means. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of people hype it up more than it is. It's like, dude, sometimes shit's gonna change. You know what I mean? Sometimes you gotta be
Eh,
reasonable. You know, sometimes you gotta be like, okay, like, oh well, I mean, if people could just do what they need to do, then everything would be fine. You know what I mean? But I mean, what's the big deal? Like, okay, maybe this is my question I want to get at, because I want to find out kind of, all right, we're not going to find it, but I want to like try to get near the line of like what's okay and what's not okay. So, I mean, okay, we all we all drive cars, you know what I mean? Like in
mm,
America, people love to drive their cars, you know what I mean? But we still
right.
got speed limits, you know what I mean? Still got speed limits. Can't drive as fast as you want. I mean, maybe in this county you can drive a little faster. On this road you can drive a little slower or something like that. But I mean, there comes a point in time where there are laws made to prevent, like a lot of states you got to wear seatbelts. You know, Florida is one of the only states, unless the law has changed. Florida is one of the only states right now, at least when I used to drive, that you could drive in flip flops. I got a ticket one time for driving in my flip flops in Massachusetts.
Really?
Like, this is a crazy shit. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, who cares? But so I'm just saying, we have laws, and I mean, supposedly, like in an ideal situation, like these laws are there to kind of maintain order. So if so if we're able to have a law that says, okay, we're gonna have to stop and everybody's gonna have to get their temperature taken. I mean, and there's some people standing in the back like, I got someplace to go, I don't want to get my temperature taken right now. It's like, what, do you want everybody to die? Like, what happened? America, America's all about like, oh, we do everything together and we wave the flag and we all sit under here under one flag and everybody's American, blah blah blah. But then when it comes to like actually giving a shit about each other, like giving each other health care, like giving each other like, the common courtesy to be like, oh, maybe I am carrying this deadly virus and I'm going to try not to give it to other people. So yeah, I'm going to like get in on this and not be a a-hole, I don't know.
I see where you're going, dude. I
I,
get it. And
I mean, what do you think? Like, what do you think? But this is what I'm interested, because I see it a lot online, and like I don't want it to come off that like I'm in any way against civil liberties. I'm just kind of like enraged a bit and playing a bit of devil's advocate in some ways. But also realistically speaking, is like I see a lot of people online talking about this. Oh, I can't believe they're canceling the concerts. Oh, they're trying to restrict people in the arts, or trying to restrict performance. Next thing you know, this is gonna happen, and next thing you know, this is gonna happen. And I'm just sitting there like, no, they're doing that because they're reasonable and they're trying to like not get everybody sick and die and overload the healthcare system that's fledgling. So it's like, what do you think like people are really like, what's happening that people are afraid of right now? Like,
it's how quickly all of this has been taken away from us. And I
yeah.
think that we're normally accustomed to having a debate about something and for it to be discussed and for everyone to have their voice heard, because that's the American way, is that we all have a voice, right? That we all want to be able to have our piece in this. And this has been ripped out from underneath us, all of us. And it's happened so fast. I mean, you're literally talking a few weeks, and it's been this slow decline down and more and more and more and more every day, every week. It's this was closing, this was closing, this was canceled, this, da, 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 da. And so all in the name of public safety, which is needed. I'm totally for what's going on. I'm not against
Mhm.
any of this. And I get where people might feel that it oh, they're stopping the arts, or that it's an infringement on certain things. I get it, but I think it's just because it's happened so quickly, and that
Yeah.
we haven't had time to process this, and that we talk about trust. We're having to trust the federal government
Yeah.
telling us that this is a problem, and
Yeah.
that we have to do these things in order to stop this problem, that are way out of all of our comfort zones, and that we're not accustomed to this. We also have to trust that this is just temporary. And I think that's where people get nervous, myself to an extent sometimes included in that, that will some of these changes that we've had to implement on the fly, it's never been discussed that, okay, when there's a global pandemic, this is closed, this will happen, this will happen. So people haven't really been able to mentally prepare for this. So because it's been so quick, we're adapting, we're changing, we're adapting on the fly.
Mm,
What will this look like 6 months from now? Will
mm.
we be able to get some of these things that we've given up back? I don't know. And I think it really just depends on where we're at with the virus. And is the virus around still? Are there hotspots still? But this, again, it goes back to testing and being able to have more accessible testing to be able to see where there are hotspots that are blowing up. I'm talking in the future, so
Yeah.
that way you can stop it, isolate, and prevent it from growing to be something bigger. And then that way we can get some of our normalcy of what things were before March back.
I mean, it's definitely a mess, and I mean, it's not, and I mean, to be fair, not just in the States, it's a mess all around the world.
Yeah, the
It's
whole
just
world.
everybody's kind of responding to it in different ways.
Right.
Well, a few things I want to mention, and then I'm going to get to a couple comments because we have some interesting comments in the YouTube chat. Is Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that I mean, you tapped on many good things, but one thing that really stood out to me in your explanation of like what people are afraid of is this taking away of things so quickly. Um
Sure.
which is interesting because I think on a base level that really makes sense. I mean, in any situation psychologically having your reality taken away from you is shocking and heartbreaking, and there's all kinds of mourning and grief and confusion and all kinds of stuff like in any situation. So actually that makes a lot of sense, and that is, you're right. I mean, I think, and this is why, man, this is why we got to talk to people from all around the world, because you get these
That's
different
right.
perspectives. So I mean, that's a really good point, and I do think that in many ways, yeah, I mean, I could see a lot of people in America just being like, it's like being a baby and getting your teddy bear taken away from you, your blankie or something like this. It's like, oh,
Sure.
I mean, for many, I don't want to get into it too much, but for many people, like, their car is their blanket, their
Sure.
gun is their blanket,
But
their
that's freedom. That's independence. Being able for me to get in my car and drive wherever I want to
Mhm.
in this country, this great country. That
but
where
but
can I? But I can't do that anymore, right? Like I'm
mhm,
so that right has been taken away from me, and that's my
mhm,
point before when I was talking about that we as a union will cease to exist if you cannot have interstate travel. But
yeah.
I get it; it's
But
temporary. I get
that's
it.
but that's the thing. But this is the thing where I think people need to become a bit disillusioned and get a little bit more into reality, because a union. I mean, okay, if we get into the very varying definitions of what a union means, I'm sure we could find one in there that might say, oh yeah, if you close a border or something like that, then a union would no longer physically exist at this moment in time. But I mean, we are a union, as are all kinds of unions, based on some kind of mutual agreements, social contract, like all these kinds of things that unite us together. Like, and I have to say it because, um, you know, it's I always have to remind uh where I'm from, like in America, and I'm not necessarily you, but whoever's out there listening, that we're not that special in America. I'm sorry to say, like, this is, and it's a very well-known term, and many great philosophers and scientists will talk about the social scientists will talk about the idea of like American exceptionalism. It's like
Mm.
everything, like I would say like 75% of what you've said so far, it's like, I'm like, yeah, like, and I think most people agree, like, yeah, it's not so much different here over here in Norway, it's not so much different over here in Italy or whatever. But what I think, what you what you don't have so much as this exceptional feeling inside that, oh yeah, like to just go, like I think, to just be able to go wherever you want. You know what I mean? I mean, you do have that ability 99.999% of the time. You know what I mean? And nobody's trying to take that away from people. You know what I mean? If somebody was legitimately trying to take, like if the government just swooped in and was like, okay, we're gonna encroach upon all your rights, okay. But we are against an unprecedented uh virus, unprecedented like existential crisis that is immediately hitting people. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it's going to affect our health, and it's going to affect our families and our grandma and all these people, and it's affecting our jobs, and it's going to affect the economy and all these kinds of things. And I mean, I'm saying this for all the people out there, if anybody's listening, is that the important thing about this right now is to not be selfish. It is to
Right.
be
Agreed.
it's really important to be fucking reasonable and say, okay, like, and I don't want to encourage anybody to like give up their rights, but no, I don't think, stops on the road and this and that, or even curfews and stuff like this is not giving up rights. This is like what we have to do as a collective to collect the common good. And of course, this is hard, not just for like societies that really, put individualism on a pedestal, but it's also just difficult for a lot of people in general. Like there's just like people all around the world that, we're all individuals and we all like to go places, and nobody likes to sit at home and all this kind of stuff. But it's like we got to have this mentality, because the only way that we're going to get back to any like type of normalcy, and I don't want people to expect that things are going to get back to normal. There's going to be a new normal. There might
Totally.
be a lot more gloves, a lot more hand washing, a lot more temperature taken, like a lot more this, that, and the other thing. But like, if we want to get back to anything that's not a complete and utter implosion of like the world and society and culture and everything like this, then we have to lay low. You know what I mean? We gotta try.
Agreed.
And I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't heard anything yet. And even when I see, let's go back to like the robot for a second. Like, when we see this robot going around, I mean, okay, it looks really sci-fi, and I'm not sure how I feel about this. This is kind of, maybe I'll come to a conclusion. But I mean, it's a bit bizarre, it's a bit strange, it's a bit kind of interesting, it's a bit funny. But I mean, what is this robot? Okay, if this robot comes up to you and is enforcing like a curfew, and that's weird, man. That's fucking weird. But like, what? But actually, what is this stealing away from us? In this extreme and ridiculous example, but
No,
actually
I
real for
mean,
the
I
people
get
of
it.
Tunisia.
Well, no, but so
I don't
I
know.
have this. I no, I see where you're coming from, but like my point, and I think so that we can move on. I'll just end by saying this: that we better get back what we're giving up, and if we don't, I mean, let us not forget what the Second Amendment is here in this country. I'm not talking about just the right to bear arms. It's the right, the way that the Second Amendment is written, and I'm going to butcher it right now, and shame on me, but that it's the right to assemble militias, and really it's to keep the government in check, right? It's the checks and balance. You give the people the power to be able to assemble and to be able to speak their mind on certain things, but then you also give them the power to be able to hold those accountable. And if it needs to even be so, like from a militia standpoint, like we're never going to get there where we're going to have, and I don't think it's going to turn into any kind of crazy civil unrest, but there people will get loud in this country
Oh
if the
yeah.
things that we're giving up right now are not returned to us. And we're going to be okay in giving up some of the freedoms or things that we didn't have to deal with before. And I think what you're saying, a lot of that is true, that like we're going to have a new normal. Okay, that's just something that we're going to have to all sober up to and accept. But the way robotics play into it, I don't have a problem with that. I think that's technology, and if anything, we need to take robotics, we need to take more technology, and we need to apply it. So just think about this: if we had robots in the hospital, we wouldn't be worrying about our frontline people as much, right? Because
Well,
we
yeah,
got
that's
robots
yeah.
going around helping the people that are sick, and that they would, they'd be in a protected bubble in a control room, like controlling the robots to give them medicine and check on them or whatever. we'll
Hmm.
get there. I think in our lifetime, we'll have that available to us. That technology will be there on a regular basis. We're already starting to see some of it. So look, I mean, is it any more so to have a robot on the ground than a pole with a bunch of cameras on it and monitoring people in a square and if they're out at a certain time? Or is it any different than having a pole in a neighborhood that can hear when a gunshot goes off, that it can send police to an area? Because those are things that are already happening here in the United States. So, okay, is it this roaming force that is not friendly and approachable? Yeah, it's a cult, it's a machine, it's like a robot. People get weirded out by that kind of stuff. But parts of that are already here, and we're already living with part of it. And if it helps the greater good for this immediate need that we have, this immediate problem that we're all trying to get through, then all right, then so be it. But let's see where this goes. There's a dot at the end of all this. So, what were some of the comments that people are?
Yeah, I'm gonna look through some of the comments. Well, one of the comments, and I also have this question for you. A comment that keeps popping up is we're stirring the pot over here in the comments section.
Ooh, very good.
So well, yeah, so what has been taken away thus far?
Tangibly or
Yeah, like what, like that's what I'm saying. Because earlier I asked you, what are
job?
people so worried about? No, but I mean, what civil,
Rights?
what civil liberties have been taken away so far? This
Freedom
is a
of
question
movement.
coming from Fizole.
Freedom of movement.
Freedom of
Primarily,
movement.
freedom
Okay.
of movement has
Mm-hmm.
been infringed.
Okay.
Uh,
Check. This is also here. Also here. Yeah.
and the rights that we've lost have been not just here. I mean, it's worldwide.
Yeah.
We're all experiencing these same things. So here in Florida, we're all very accustomed to the way of life when a hurricane comes, and this is very reminiscent of what a hurricane has felt like. Now, usually in a hurricane, there's runs on stores and empty shelves on certain things, water, bread, these kinds of things, and there's curfews and those kinds of things that are implemented. So we're used to that kind of stuff. There's emergency orders issued. Counties go under, states go under. There's a state of emergency announced. So those things are normal for us, and we're already dealing with those kinds of things. So,
Mm-hmm.
am I still able to freely assemble right now if I wanted to? No, that's taken away from me. All in the name of health, and that's fine because we need that. And I'm not advocating
Yeah,
that.
I mean, you can assemble, but then a bunch of people might die. Because I mean,
Exactly, and
I
I
mean,
don't want that. No
I
one
mean,
wants. Let's go in the
I'm just
right
gonna
direction.
like check I'm gonna check another box here because we have the same restrictions here. Yeah, just no, I'm just interested to see what is similar and different between over here and over there.
Definitely. I
So
mean, I think in just the freedom, primarily it's the freedom of movement and the freedom of being able to do what we want when we want, however we want.
yeah.
And that's just basic rights as far as what we're accustomed to in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to go freely about our business and do what we want to do. And again, the individualism is something to that extent, and that plays into it, that we're all accustomed to this individualism and independence of ourselves. But this is something that what we're also not used to is to do something for the collective good. I think there are definitely people in society who want to help and do things that are for the collective good that are beyond them, myself included. I've done that numerous times. I'm involved in organizations that are for the greater good, and I've given back to those organizations and to other people in doing that are beyond just me as an individual, right? It's this collective good. So I think that we want to do that and we want to have that, but there's also still a part of society that unbelievably thinks that all this is a hoax, which is incredible to me. And hopefully their voice doesn't gain mainstream traction, Although there's plenty of people who feel that way, which is
Oh yeah, it is. I think we'll take that definitely to the next episode because I have a whole bunch of stuff I want to talk about.
okay. Very good. We'll go there. But I think bottom line, and to answer Fazoli, is like, look, like there are simple things, and again, primarily the freedom of movement that have been taken away from us. However,
Hmm.
am I? Do I feel like, or am I an actual prisoner in my home? No. Can I get out and go get in my car still and go drive somewhere? Yes. Where am I driving to? No, nothing's open. So where the hell am I driving
Yeah.
to? So it's just, it's a maybe more so of a feeling than an actual removal of right. But there are certain things that you cannot go do anymore, um, and we'll see how that continues to erode down the line. And really, how that will erode even more so is if there's civil unrest, because from civil unrest will come martial law, and then that's a whole host of other things that will be suspended, habeas corpus, like all these things. But the court system's shut down. So like I mean, if I got pulled over, arrested, I mean, I'm sure they're still having hearings and people are still getting arrested for robbery and just other shit. But like, I'm sure they have a court date, right? Like, so that hasn't stopped. Like the system hasn't stopped. It just adapted. But let's see where this goes a month from now. So right now, as we're sitting here, those are the things. And I think you're seeing them in Europe as well, too, as you mentioned, around the
Yeah,
world.
no, it's very interesting because I mean I'm sure there's like a number, a good. I just don't hear the outcry. It's the same situation. It's like I think actually we have it even more strict probably. But
You
of course,
do. You do.
yeah, and
Definitely.
I don't know. It's just really interesting because it really is this, and it. I mean, I know it because I grew up and I lived it, and I see it every day. It's just this kind of feeling like uh a lot of people are feeling like they are the only ones dealing with this right now. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not directed towards you. I'm just kind of like, from what I understand, like in the what I see and what I hear from my people back in America, and they have this feeling like, oh, my rights are being taken. It's like, dude, it's fucking everybody. Like
It is, but I think
this is not a rights grab. I mean, it could turn into something like that. You never know,
right.
but that's
That's my
like
point. Right.
paranoia. You know what I mean? This is like
Fear of
paranoia.
what?
Like
Yeah.
what we need to do right now as responsible people is lay the fuck low because and if that means there's some dummies out there that want to run around and infect people, then like too bad. Like that's unfortunately these laws and these restrictions are mostly made for the lowest common denominator. You know what I mean? I mean, I mean, still, if you have an essential job or you have to go to work, you can still go. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
nobody's like stopping you from doing that. So I mean, it's really just. I mean, yeah. Would we want people gathering in like groups of 10 right now? I mean,
No, of course not.
if you were gonna have, I mean, let's be real. Even before, and then after, I'm gonna stop ranting soon because I know I want to get a couple more questions in before we
Yeah,
end
go
because I know
for
we
it.
got to
Yeah.
end soon. But like I mean, even I mean, dude, even before for forever, I mean, assembling to protest in any kind of situation in the United States is always being violated. You know what I mean? Like this is. I just think that but I think the point I'm trying to get to is like, I mean, yeah, I mean, it just depends on what it is. It's like, okay, yeah, we'll let the women's march go on because this is something that we're fine with. But I mean, if we're gonna sit over here and have some protest against like whatever, it just depends. The government's always picking and choosing. You know what I mean? So I think that we really do have this in many cases unrealistic approach in the states to having freedom. Like freedom always has costs and there's always a lot of dovetails and there's a lot of corners being cut, and at the end of the day it's like depends on a lot of things, a lot of social factors, a lot of visual factors, a lot of what you look like, where you're from, who you did, a lot of social profiling, like this, that, the other thing. So I mean our rights are being continually fringed upon, and maybe if you happen to be in like a more privileged like section of life than others, maybe it doesn't affect us as much as it might affect other people. So for a lot of people, what I think is happening right now, especially when you describe like going to the store and there's not as much food and this and that and the other thing and blah 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 and all this stuff, and it's all real stuff and it's all affecting. And I think it goes back to your point of you know um it's very shocking for a lot of people, but that's, I think, really what people are dealing with right now is the shock, because
Correct.
really what people are dealing with right now is what it's like in a lot of places around the world all the time. I mean, here in Norway, it's also not like that. Like, we're not used to, like, oh, things not being on the shelves and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, for a lot of people all around the world, like, life's just kind of like this all the time. It's restrictions, curfews, the power is going out. You can't go here, you can't go there because of these, like, social reasons, I mean, I just got word down in Colombia. They started this system where, and this is from another guy we had on the podcast a couple times so far, uh, Leonard Jolson.
Mhm.
Check that one out. He just sent me a message today saying that yeah, now depending on the number on your ID card, these numbers can go out to go shopping and take care of essential services on certain days. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And oh yeah, so this is definitely, but you know what? At the same time, they've got like feedback from, like, I mean, Colombia, like, they got feedback from the World Health Organization, like, applauding them, because they're like, yeah, like, you guys are actually, because in Colombia it hasn't really blown up nearly as much as other places so far, but they said, but it started blowing up in Ecuador, Brazil, like surrounding countries and stuff like that. And they said, okay, we're going to take this extra careful right now. And I mean, that's the kind of place with, like, very low social safety net, like practically none, and where people are like literally, like, the majority of people are living hand to mouth, like selling
Yeah.
stuff on the street, like all this kind of stuff. So I mean, who even knows how that's gonna pan out? And I think we're gonna do another interview on that in a couple days. But I mean, so I mean, it's like we're all dealing with this shit right now. So I think people are gonna hurt themselves more than they help themselves if they get all up in arms about these kind of fantastical rights or privileges, or whatever we want to, list, whatever word we want to choose. If they freak out about this too much and, like, say, oh, I'm gonna go outside anyways, I don't give a shit what people saying, or I'm gonna, like, say, it's like, it's not time for that yet. Like, we gotta
Right.
be like, yeah, and we gotta really, like, hunker down. And in a couple weeks, this thing could pass over if people could really do it. I mean, I don't even think they're doing it well enough here or any of the other places I see on TV. Maybe maybe they did it, but I mean, people just gotta chill. You know what I mean? Like,
Agreed.
that's
Agreed.
what I think. Let's take a few more questions from the audience before we before we get started here. Before I'm sorry, before we get before
Or
we get
wrap
out
it
of
up.
here. Before we wrap it up. Yeah, no, I mean, this is great, but I think we should. Man,
I think we're going on
uh,
2 hours now almost.
good lord,
Yeah, I
man, a
think, man. That's
spicy
hey, I know
conversation
that's what I'm
today.
saying. Thanks for everyone
Um,
listening and watching and your
I saw
interaction.
a couple of
Appreciate
good questions in here. Uh, let's see. Oh well, one person, Johnny D, said, he thinks we should lock it all down hard globally, and no person is more important than the collective civilization. Balance between being an individual and knowing we aren't at the center of the universe. Just kind of a nice statement.
and very interesting, and I don't disagree with that. I think there
Yeah.
should be some kind of worldwide lockdown. We basically are already there.
Yeah.
I mean, if this was a few weeks ago, maybe that might be more of like a thing that we should have done this in the beginning of March. We took our time, and this has been, at least here in the States, this has been uh, the 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 onion has continually been peeled back further and further and further, and we're we're basically there. And I don't know the exact number, but I think there's only a handful of states that are left that have not implemented stay-at-home orders. But how in each state now you're going to start hearing about, so what's the next couple of weeks going to look like? You're going to start hearing about states that are, how are they enforcing this order,
Mm.
and what does that look like from state to state? Are people being arrested? Are people being fined? What's happening to enforce this? How are police force, how are municipalities enforcing these rules, and under what jurisdiction are they enforcing these rules? So there's a lot more to come. And I think what we're trying to do as a society is say exactly what he's saying. Just lock it down. Everyone lock it down. Stay at home. We see there's signs all over town now that, and I've noticed even the advertising has changed. I don't know how much TV if you're watching out there, to all of our listeners, but I've noticed it full on that the marketing that we're being thrown at has changed. It's a more sensitive type of marketing. It's a we will get through this. It's a we're doing this as an organization, as a big company to be more safe. So there are things, there are steps that the messaging is there. And I think for the most part, people get it. For the most part, people are on board with this. I'm on board with this. We have to
Mm,
do these things, right? It sucks. It sucks not having a job. It sucks not being able to go
it
to a concert.
sucks.
It does. It really sucks.
It
But like,
does.
so and I get what you were saying previously, that there are people that this is the norm for them. So for the majority of us that aren't accustomed to this, like this is again a process, and this is a part of the shock and dealing with the shock. So the shutdown is there. I think it's where will we go from here? I think people will start developing these processes and new ways and adapting of going about things. And I think for the most part, everything's closed down. Why is there a need to travel anywhere? Like why
Mm.
I'm not going to go sightseeing in New York City right now, unless you want to like really
So
have a thing to go lay down in the middle of Times Square by yourself because there's no one else there. So like, I mean, there's no point. The beaches are closed here. Why are people come down here? So there are things that have already been implemented to have that shutdown. Just people just need to focus on their individual efforts. And what do I mean by that? Don't go have a barbecue with your neighbors with 10 other people. Don't go bike ride or go work out with 10 other people. Like it, a lot of the transmission happens from family type of interaction, smaller interaction, cluster interaction, which can then explode from there. And I think we've seen that happen. So the measures are working. I think we're going to start seeing positive news in that sense over the next 2 weeks. Hopefully we hear that. I think what we're going to hear over the next 2 weeks is a lot of negative. We're going to hear a lot of the body count going up. We're going to hear a lot of cluster outbreak in different areas of the country,
yeah.
and that the
Yikes.
epicenters will move, and Florida will become an epicenter as New York levels off. So Texas will blow up, and like you're going to start seeing these shifts. So we just have to be mentally prepared for that. But I think as these orders come in place and people like get into a new routine of being able to do things or not being able to do things, then we'll see what we all want. We want to get to the other side of the curve. We will get to the other side of the curve. We just all have to do our part. Stay at home. Stay focused on what we need to do collectively, individually do to help the collective good.
Amen. Amen to that, brother. Yeah,
Was that
I
all the
think
comments?
it's I think no doubt about it. No doubt about it. These are scary times that we live in,
Indeed.
and it's really hard in a lot of ways to, you know, it's really hard to know what the future holds at this point. And I think all we can do is kind of, I mean, we're learning new things about these viruses every day,
Yep.
this virus every day, and I mean, a couple weeks ago they didn't want you to wear a mask. Now they want you to wear a mask. A couple weeks
Yep.
ago it was like the flu. Now it's like the plague, like all this kind of stuff. So I think it really is day by day, and I
Yep.
think we just have to. I think the important thing is we all have to really just try to be good to each other. And at this point in time, the best thing you can do is just try to keep yourself, all you people out there, keep yourself healthy and just stay home as much as possible. And I mean, we must stay very vigilant on what our government governing bodies are up to, and we must stay very vigilant on our health and our sanitization and all these kinds of things. So we got to stay very vigilant about a lot of things, but hopefully, like we said all the way back in the beginning of our conversation, try to also take some opportunity in this if you can, if you're healthy enough to do so. Care for the people that you can be in contact with, those people who are alone, those people who you haven't talked to in a while. and do whatever you can to just stay sane and stay healthy and keep the other people around you healthy, and stay away from the other people that aren't around you. And but be vigilant. And I think we had some really important conversations today, a lot of throwing back and forth of ideas that I think are going through a lot of people's heads at this
Yeah,
point in time. And yeah, I mean,
that's
I think I
beautifully
think I
said,
think
man.
I think we're good for I think we're gonna close up shop for today. Thank
Leave
you
it
so
there.
much, Brock,
Absolutely.
for
My
coming
pleasure.
by, Mr. Screaming Eagle himself. This was a fantastic conversation. And I mean, holy God, I think we could go on for like 8 hours, but I think we'll just have to break that up into take that into the next week.
Tune in next time, everybody. Look, you're sitting at home. Why not watch Progressives Abroad and listen to us and join in on the chat and get interactive with us? Follow Progressives Abroad. Follow Open Mic Oslo. When's
Yeah.
your next broadcast? When's your next open mic night?
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess I'll just give a little shout out to that everybody too. We've got a whole network going on here. So we also have another channel called the Open Mic International channel, where every Thursday, depending on where you are in the world, we're doing it from 8 to about 10 o'clock every Thursday night here at Oslo time. That's GMT +1 time. If you're in the States, it's from 2 to 4 p.m. East Coast time, New York, Florida time. So everybody tune in. I know Mr. Screaming Eagle's been tuning in, and we
Love it.
really appreciate that. We get a lot. It's a lot of fun. I mean, you can
It
sign
is.
up, you can play if you want. You can just sit back, relax, invite all your friends, sit around. It's a very social thing to do in this time of social isolation, and it's even better than it sounds. Like, everybody has a really good time, so it's a lot of fun. So
It is.
I'll drop some info about that in the link that's happening this Thursday. And yeah, everybody, just don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like our page. We're gonna be back again real soon in the next couple days. Thanks so much again, Screaming Eagle, for coming by today.
My pleasure.
Always
One
a,
love, everybody.
always a
Stay safe.
pleasure.
Stay
And yeah,
home.
please. So also,
Love.
sorry everybody, for all of you in the comments. We'll try to be a little more conscientious of that next time. I know there's like a ton of junk, a ton of vivacious conversation going on in there. Maybe we'll even try to get some of y'all on the show. Uh, Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. Don't forget to give us a shout. Progressives Abroad, over and out. Thank you very much. Yeah.